Hi, and welcome to Anne's Family Recipe. Today I'm making a pumpkin spice banoffee pie. Today's pie recipe is a collaboration hosted by my friend Cheyenne from the channel American Turca Kitchen. She's gathered a whole bunch of awesome cooks together to make a very unique variety of pies, both savory and sweet. So I'm going to make sure I have her playlist linked in my description box below. Everyone's channel will be mentioned, and you are going to love these pie recipes. Now, have you ever heard of a banoffee pie? I have been really wanting to make one of these for so long. It is very simple. You start with a graham cracker crust. Mine will be homemade today, but of course you could buy one pre-made at the store, no problem. And then you have a gooey, sweet layer of dulce de leche, which I made myself as well. I took a can of sweetened condensed milk, and you'll just have to see what I did to it. It's so good. And then on top of that, you layer bananas and then this fluffy whipped cream. And of course, I had to have a little bit of a fall twist. So I added in some of my own homemade pumpkin pie spice, which I'll tell you about too. So let's get baking. I started my pumpkin spice banoffee pie by making my own dulce de leche from scratch. So I'm using a 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk that has a flat lid that you have to open with the can opener, as opposed to a pop top, because I have read online that those can potentially explode during this process, which I did not want to risk happening. All you do is peel the label off the can and then put it in a big pot of water and simmer it for a few hours inside the can. So I chose a slightly smaller burner on my stove just so that it was a really controlled low simmer. I covered my can by about an inch with water, and then I brought it to a gentle boil and reduced the heat to a simmer and cooked it for a total of 3 hours. Every half hour I added about 2 extra cups of very warm water so the top of the can would never be exposed. You want it to maintain that inch or so of water on top of it, and then halfway through the cooking process I did flip it over just so that the cooking was very even. I was just showing here that I moved it to the back burner so that none of my kids could reach the pot. Now, of course, you could just purchase a 14-ounce can of dulce de leche from your grocery store, but I'd always wanted to test out this experiment. Also, there are other recipes online for making your own dulce de leche from sweetened condensed milk that don't involve boiling the can, so you can research those yourself if you want to. Lastly, I removed the can and allowed it to cool completely before opening it up. And let me just tell you, the substance inside this can was liquid gold. It was so incredible. I'm really glad that I tried this out. It was very simple to do. It just took a little bit of time, and it took my pie over the top. 2 quick notes about the process. One, it made my can a little rusty when I cooked it that long, and it left rings on the bottom of my pot, but they came off when I scrubbed it. Secondly, I should have soaked my can in warm water to get the label off instead of just peeling it off, because the sticky residue that remained on the can left a ring around the top of my pot, which I'm still struggling to get off. So if you have any tips for that, let me know. Next up, I'm making homemade pumpkin pie spice. Now again, this is something you can just buy pre-made in the spice section of your grocery store, but I typically have all of these spices separately in my pantry, so I just make a big batch of pumpkin pie spice that I can use throughout the year. This consists of cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, ginger, and ground cloves, and I'll leave all the measurements in the description box below. I've been using this particular Tupperware container for years for my pumpkin pie spice, and when I run out and remake a new batch, I run it through the dishwasher, but you can see it's permanently stained pumpkin spice color. But I just store it in here and it lasts a really long time, so I'm going to use this both in my crust and in the whipped cream topping for our pie. Now for the crust, I'm starting with 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter that I melted and cooled a little bit, and then 1 sleeve of graham crackers. Now I cross-referenced several graham cracker crust recipes online, and a lot of them say to use a 1/3 cup of granulated sugar in your crust. So I did, but I found that this made it a little bit sandy in texture and honestly a little too sweet. So I would recommend 2 tablespoons to a 1/4 cup at most, just depending on how sweet you'd like your crust. And I also added in a 1/2 teaspoon of that homemade pumpkin pie spice. So I ground it all together in my food processor and then streamed in the melted butter little by little to kind of bring the crust together. And don't be afraid, if you feel like it's a little dry, you can always add a little extra melted butter because you want your crust mixture to be pretty wet so that it all sticks together and then bakes into a nice solid crust and doesn't get all crumbly and kind of sandy in texture. I just use my hands to press the pie crust mixture into my 9-inch glass pie dish, and then this baked at 350 degrees just for about 8 minutes until it was set and slightly golden. And just like my homemade dulce de leche, I allowed the pie crust to cool completely before assembling my pie. Now this recipe is great because you can make that dulce de leche and the crust days in advance and save them until you're ready to use them. The day of, I made the whipped cream and then sliced up the fresh bananas. So for my homemade pumpkin spice whipped cream, I used an entire pint of heavy whipping cream, so that's 2 cups, and to that I added in a 1/4 cup of powdered sugar and 2 teaspoons of my pumpkin pie spice. I also added in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, but evidently forgot to film it. But I used my electric hand mixer with the whisk attachment to beat this all together so that it was nice and stiff so that it would retain that texture when I used it to top my pie. Now this whipped cream topping is actually not very sweet. You can always add a little extra powdered sugar if you like, but it is a perfect contrast to that super sweet dulce de leche that's going to be underneath it. Plus the bananas will have a nice sweetness too. My final step before assembling the pie is to slice up bananas. Now I only had 3 usable bananas in my fruit bowl, but I would say 3 to 4 medium-sized bananas would be good because you definitely want a solid single, if not double layer of banana inside your pie. So finally, to assemble the pumpkin spice banoffee pie, I took my cooled crust and spread the dulce de leche in a nice thick layer all over the bottom. Next, I placed all of my sliced bananas on top. Now, it's fun to put them into a pretty pattern and it looks really nice, but you're gonna cover it all with whipped cream anyway, so it's not essential. You can just throw them on there. One of my favorite things to do when I'm baking for fall is to pull out my fall leaf spatula. It makes me super excited. So I used it to dollop all of that fluffy pumpkin spice whipped cream on top. And you might think that it's a lot, but it honestly is the perfect amount to cover the top, and it makes a nice thick layer on top of your pie. It's beautiful and super delicious. As a finishing touch, I sprinkled a little extra pumpkin pie spice all over the top of my pie. Then I refrigerated it for about an hour before serving. Can you say Banafi? Yummy! You like it? You need a napkin? Okay. This pie was cool and creamy, decadent and rich, really sweet. It had a nice crunch from the crust, and the bananas gave it a little bit of a freshness. I think you're going to absolutely love this for the upcoming holiday season. Thank you so much to Cheyenne for including me in this awesome pie collaboration. Don't forget to check out everyone else's amazing pie recipes. I'll link to the playlist in my description box below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up if you liked my pumpkin spice banoffee pie, and I'll see you again soon with more family recipes.